I sure do love me some Ninjago. You slap that Ninjago logo onto it, and you bet I'll be eating it up like a fine 5-star meal. But no matter how many Ninjago books, sets, games, and even piggy banks LEGO throws out to feed us Ninjago fans, the main Ninjago attraction for me will always be the show itself, with its many episodes. After well over 200 episodes, it's a real surprise as to how they've yet to make a bad one. Oh my god, I was kidding. And with Dragons Rising Season 1 releasing just this year, we can now add the insane amount of 20 new episodes to the Ninjago saga, only being beaten by Season 11 and Season 15 for most episodes in one season, but those are all like 11 minutes long, so do we even count them? Dragons Rising Season 1 is by far the longest Ninjago season of all time. It may not have 30 episodes like Season 11 and Season 15, but with each Dragons Rising episode being 22 minutes long, it beats the two previous longest seasons total runtime of 5.5 hours, with a whopping 7.33333333 hours. Which, fun fact, is the exact amount of time it took for the writers to write Crystallized, and even then I'm being very generous. After indulging in all of this new Ninjago content, the next course of action will be to place every Dragons Rising episode into a good old fashioned tier list. Us Ninjago fans just can't stop making these things, it's like breathing to us. And of course, the predictable first step in this great cause is to start our ranking with the very first episode of this Ninjago landslide of content, The Merge Part 1. Would be pretty strange if we started with the 16th episode. This first episode of this new Ninjago era does a fantastic job of setting the tone and groundwork for the rest of the season, establishing the merge and the new Ninjago world LEGO will be sure to milk for another 10 years. Eren and Sora's introduction to the show is handled perfectly, doing a great job of showcasing how close these two characters are, and immediately making the two of them incredibly likable characters. The other new characters introduced are also great additions to the Ninjago world, Mr. Frohiki of course being a standout. Within the episode, Imperium is quickly established as a real threat for the ninja, Sora briefly speaking about her past in Imperium, and Raj just being a total badass. Overall, I think this episode totally deserves to be placed into S tier. Following up the Merge Part 1 is, no surprise, the Merge Part 2, which will be joining the first part in the S tier. This second episode does a great job of continuing the first part, giving Lloyd a fantastic reintroduction that really shows how his characters managed to grow since we last saw him. The Merge Quakes being introduced really raise the stakes for the season and create a unique mystery that really manages to draw your attention and question how the ninja are going to stop them. Kai showing back up was certainly a very nice treat within the episode, setting up an interesting story for everyone's favourite red ninja. But the biggest and most intriguing part of the episode is the introduction of Dragon Matriarchs and the massive amount of power that they are able to share, piling onto the mysteries to be solved in future seasons. Next to rank is Episode 3 Crossroads Carnival, which continues the trend of being yet another great episode. As the Crossroads Carnival is in the title of the episode, it's only fair to give it some discussion time. The Crossroads Carnival does a great job of showing all these new cultures and species that are now living in Ninjago. My favourite part of the carnival though has got to be the small scene of Lloyd seeing how much the ninja means to the people, speaking with these two kids in the sort of memorial tent. It's just such a nice sweet scene that makes even a person as dead inside as myself smile. In his first ever appearance, the Rama instantly became one of my new favourite Ninjago characters, being both very fun to watch with his theatrical attitude and also a pretty intimidating enemy with his giant puppet, which gave us an awesome action scene. Lobo getting some screen time is another massive plus for this episode. I would do unspeakable things for Lobo. Tier A welcomes its first resident with Episode 3. With Episode 3 taken care of, that leads us to Beyond Madness, the fourth episode of the season. This episode welcomes back Nia and does it in a really good way, having Nia be a protector for the Craglings, which are great to see again after so long. Personally, I do feel like this episode, however, is a bit of a step down from the previous episodes. It just doesn't feel as exciting or important to the rest of the season's story, mainly serving as an episode to get Lloyd, Nia and Kai in the same place, which I'm certainly not angry about. But I am angry that these mud monsters didn't show up again. Ninjago has never felt the same without them. Episode 4 better start getting cozy in the B tier. B for Beyond Madness, I suppose. Episode 5 Riders of Destiny steps up to the ranking plate, and is definitely an improvement over Episode 4. Cloud Kingdom gets all the screen time this episode, and it is used fantastically, with the show finally clarifying that the writers of Destiny don't actually write everything that happens, basically just being a religious cult. The big surprise of this episode is the appearance of a brand new Master of Wind, Euphrasia, who is great in her first episode, proving that she's worth being an elemental master. Another surprise relates to these strange worm guys, looking ripped right out of Harry Potter or some other inferior franchise. These worms are apparently cursed by some unknown entity, which certainly creates an interesting mystery as to who might be pulling some strings behind the scenes. Writers of Destiny shall be moving into the A tier. If you know your number line, you'd know that after episode 5 comes episode 6, Return to Imperium. This episode goes back in time to show Sora's palace in Imperium, being able to greatly show how controlling the Society of Imperium is within the city. Sora's character gets some really good depth in this excellent episode, showing us how terrible our parents are, and our hero Dr. Leroux was nothing but a manipulative villain. Sora being responsible for the creation of the Photak device and their hunter hounds gives her some good motivation to confront the mistakes of her past. The way the writers are able to show Sora's backstory in such a great way gets this episode placed into Tier A. Mindless Beasts, the 7th episode of Dragon's Rising, continues to deep dive into Imperium and, yet again, does it fantastically. The appearance of the Imperium Teen Protection Force goes to show how deep the mind-washing of Empress Beatrix goes, these kids being taught the Imperium ideology from such a young age and made to believe that dragons are truly nothing but mindless beasts. How Dr. Leroux and the rest of Imperium view dragons in this episode is just so sickening and cruel, making Imperium even more of a villainous faction simply by how they abuse dragons. I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at dragon cruelty. Wildfire makes a grand entrance to the series this episode, and the writers certainly made her a very entertaining character to watch, along with some mystery as to what her elemental power is. A tier will yet again be welcoming the episode into its arms with episode 7. Moving on from the 7th episode, we now have the 8th episode, I Will Be the Danger, giving every Breaking Bad fan flashbacks. A main portion of this episode is centered around Wildfire, which explains a good bit of her backstory in a really nice way, showing the family bond between her and Heatwave. During the episode, Kai has a strange encounter with his presumably Wu's spirit, eventually leading him to Nia, which sets up an interesting mystery about what lies underneath the monastery. Despite the very Breaking Bad inspired title, I do somehow find this episode a bit of a step down, especially in terms of the story not progressing all that much. But it's still another great episode in this season. I Will Be the Danger, more like I'll be placed into B tier. For that joke, you have my permission to dislike the video. Episode 9, The Common Side, certainly has an interesting opening scene, featuring a strange version of young Lloyd training with Wu. Despite how off young Lloyd is in this scene, I do quite like the training scene and what Wu is teaching Lloyd, especially since it does become pretty vital towards the episode's end in a great scene with piss-coloured Wu. The way Empress Beatrix is shown off this episode is perfect, the show easily communicating how much power she has over everything, as she can effortlessly shut down a powerful warrior like Roz and speak down to him. No great Ninjago episode is complete without an awesome action scene, and this episode sure has an awesome one. The many dragons fighting against Imperium's hunter hounds was definitely a treat to watch. Although it basically makes no sense as to how Zane suddenly has a matching outfit with the rest of the ninja despite being locked in a metal cocoon for supposedly a couple of years, Zane's return didn't fail to put a smile on my face. I think this episode will fit nicely into A tier. And now for the final episode of part 1, the Battle of the Second Monastery. As the name suggests, a battle does indeed take place this episode, and it's pretty damn good, but the main highlight of the episode has got to be Lloyd's interaction with the Source Dragon under Imperium. Everything about Lloyd's vision is done perfectly, down to the visuals and the incredible soundtrack in the background. Along with being great eye candy, it brings up so many questions that makes the future of the show extremely interesting, such as what are these symbols for, and what's with the ninja graveyard? Sora being able to redeem herself by shutting down the Photaks is a nice little cherry on top of the episode. Episode 10 more than deserves a spot in the highest tier. As we're now halfway through the ranking with all of part 1 ranked, I think this is a good time to take a break for a word from our sponsor. It's me. I'm the sponsor. Subscribe please so that I can justify watching a children's show for an obsessive amount of time. With my quick begging over, it's on to ranking the episodes of part 2. starting with the Temple of the Dragon Cores. It's great to see in this episode that Aaron is finally allowed to have his own ninja suit, no longer just fighting in jeans and a hoodie, now he's fighting in a hoodie and orange pants. A big part of this episode is Lloyd becoming the new master of the monastery, and I really like how by the end of the episode, Lloyd finally agrees to having a bit of help and not doing everything by himself, learning from Wu's biggest mistake. But the big thing to talk about in this episode is the crazy lore development of the first Ninjutsu Master not only creating the golden weapons, but also some of the 16 realms, along with the Dragon Cores, which, yeah, that one was pretty predictable. This episode shall be getting cozy in the A tier. An episode that won't be getting cozy in the A tier is episode 12, Gangs of the Sea, which I'm afraid to say is our first mid episode. In my opinion, I find this episode to be the most mid episode of the season, being an extreme case of a filler episode. The only real good thing I can say about the episode is that Eren gets some time to shine with some training and action, but everything else just feels so bland and boring. This episode largely focuses on the overdone trope of a small group of people being taught how to defend themselves by our heroes, and I just didn't really find it too interesting to watch. Gangs of the Sea shall be the first episode thrown into the C tier. I would say our next episode is certainly a step up from the previous one, being titled Wildly Inappropriate. Unfortunately, there are no sex jokes in this episode. The episode begins with a small cameo from the Bone Warriors from the Ninjago core sub-theme, which isn't anything major for the episode, but was still nice to see these designs being used within the show. They gotta sell those core sets somehow. Wildfire is no doubt the main character of the episode, spending a large chunk of the episode cleaning up her old pranks on the lava tides, which look like something from South Park. Seriously, try to tell me these things don't look somewhat similar. Zane also gets some good screen time this episode, donning his iconic detective outfit, which was great to see. The highlight of Zane's portion of the episode for me has got to be Gulch's small speech to Zane. Just when Zane is feeling like he's no longer the same hero he once was, Gulch speaks about how large of a void Zane left behind, so that maybe not even Zane himself could live up to his own heroic actions. It's a small but really nice moment dedicated to Zane, who hasn't really had much going on in recent years. I'll be putting episode 13 into tier B. After episode 13, it's of course going to be episode 14, The Last Djinn, making me fanboy over the slightest Skybound reference. The Last Djinn has got to be in my top 3 episodes of this Dragon's Rising season, my Skybound bias no doubt playing a massive part. Ignoring my unhealthy obsession with season 6, the episode itself is fantastic, especially in the way they handle Arakor. This once proud and powerful Djinn warrior has become nothing but a lazy slob, refusing to help with his power of granting wishes, acting as a mirror for Sora to see how pessimistic and self-deprecating she's been. The way Sora convinces Arakor to help is great, finally snapping Arakor out of his depressive funk and back to being a more powerful warrior, granting wishes that slowly might bring us home back. But I am incredibly salty that Notakon wasn't mentioned at all in the episode. I would have settled for Arakor saying he used to bully Notakon in Djinn High School. The Last Djinn shall be slotted into the A tier. Predictably, episode 15, They Call It Doom, will be getting ranked next. This episode is pretty good, not the very best, but also far from the worst. The newly introduced Mucoids tribe were certainly the most entertaining part of the whole episode, along with Dorama and a small action scene with the lava tides. Towards the end of episode 15, we get our first glimpse at agents from the administration, setting up a very intriguing storyline that will continue past this first season. And at the very end of the episode, Sora and Nia arrive in the land of lost things, having a short battle against this large rock golem, who, surprise surprise, is revealed to be Cole. Overall, I feel as this episode doesn't have all that much to discuss, so I'll be placing it into B tier. Episode 16, Land of Lost Things, opens with Cole finally making his return to the show, and I think everything about it is handled almost perfectly, with Cole being the protector of the Finders. Cole's relationship with the newly introduced Master of Fusion Geo is great, Geo previously being abandoned by his own species, but being able to find companionship with Cole, for once in his life actually feeling wanted and appreciated. Kai and Wildfire even get a small time to shine this episode, and I really like how Heatwave getting hurt allows us to see a more sensitive and worried side to Wildfire, showing that underneath her wild and animalistic behaviour, she too is capable of becoming scared and feeling compassionate. When the Hoarder is defeated, it's revealed that the large robot was being controlled by none other than just a shiny Ditto, who is promptly crammed into a glass jar. Oh god, anything but the jar.
Michael! Don't leave me here!
Land of Lost Things certainly didn't disappoint with Cole's return and won't be getting lost in this ranking, getting a high spot in the highest S tier. The Administration is the name of the 17th episode to be ranked, and is also the name of the place Lloyd, Aaron, and Zane find themselves exploring, which certainly isn't confusing at all. But before I go into the full discussion about the confusing mess that is the Administration, I want to bring up Kai and Wildfire's part of the episode, which features some really great characterization for Kai, with this short scene showing how much Kai has matured over the years, taking on a mentorship role for Wildfire and disposing some good old Master Wu wisdom. Everything about the Administration shown in this episode is so mysterious, down to the cryptic sounding theme to the physics breaking layout. How did all these different type of people end up working here? Who's the Administrator? And do these guys have health insurance? And of course, the high-pitched elephant in the room about this episode is the reappearance of Jay for all of 8 seconds, making all Jay fans like myself cry themselves to sleep from both joy and sadness. Mostly sadness. It's very unfortunate that Jay got barely any screen time this episode. At first I thought maybe he was the one sending Lloyd and Aaron the notes, but nope, it was just Zane. Hopefully in Season 2, Jay fans will actually get something to enjoy. Although I have a few personal issues and minor pet peeves about this episode, I can't deny that it's one of the best of the entire season, which will secure the spot in S tier. Now it's time to see which tier episode 18, Absolute Power, will be placed into. This episode finally shows us how Empress Beatrix and Roz met, showing us that Roz really took advantage of Beatrix's jealousy against her sister in order to manipulate Beatrix into killing her own father and following Roz's wish of capturing a source dragon. Unfortunately, this is Cole's last appearance this season, but his departure sets up what could potentially be a very interesting plotline, which I am looking forward to seeing unravel in hopefully the next season. This episode does an excellent job of showing how ruthless and desperate for power the Empress can be, with Roz's manipulative nature in full view during the flashbacks and while he's locked in his cell. Absolute Power is going to be an absolute S tier episode. We're almost at the end with our second to last episode to rank, being episode 19, We Are All Dragons. The epic final battle of the season begins with this episode, and it sure is epic, with Beatrix finally getting to show how ruthless she can be in a physical confrontation, almost wiping the floor with the ninja and their dragons. Beatrix's control in Imperium begins to slip within the episode, as a resistance forms due to the many lies told by the Empress, eventually leading to all of the people rising up because of a great speech from Sora in a really well done scene. Overall, episode 19 is another excellent episode at the Dragons Rising increasing amount of S tier episodes. And now finally, we're here at the final episode to rank, episode 20 of Dragons Rising, The Power Within. And I've gotta say, this is one of the best Ninjago season finals. Empress Beatrix goes mad with power, combining the 3 dragon cores to essentially make a portal gun that opens rifts in reality, all being shown in an extremely intense way. During the epic confrontation, Sora is able to unlock her true potential in such an incredible scene, finally confronting her terrible parents and being able to overcome her abandonment in order to use her powers to save her new family. The visuals of this episode are probably the best Ninjago has ever had, especially during the ninja trying to stop the world-ending merge quakes. Once again, we are treated to another vision from Lloyd within the episode, and just like the previous vision, it's incredibly well made, resulting in an awesome scene of Lloyd fixing the merge quakes. When Lloyd uses the dragon cores to free the large source dragon under Imperium, we're given the shocking reveal that elemental powers actually come from the source dragons, which, yeah, when you look at their name, you kind of piece that together. I do feel that perhaps the Empress was defeated maybe a little too easily in this episode after how strong she seemed in the previous episode, but I understand that they needed more time to focus on stopping the merge quakes. It should be no surprise that I'll be putting this final episode into the S tier. So here's the final tier list, with a whole lot of A tier episodes and only ever going down to the C tier. Is this a case of recency bias? Absolutely. But I do genuinely think that this batch of 20 episodes is really some of Ninjago's best, and hopefully the show will continue on this upward trajectory. Even after ranking 20 episodes of Ninjago goodness, I'm still itching to rank something. But what else is there to rank? Everything else has already been done. Hey, wait a minute. I've got it. The perfect tier list. Ranking the Ninjago body pillows.